I want to give you something that I don't think anybody is really talking about today because we're all worried about other things, but this is very, very important. Listen carefully, please, to this. We've been talking about what the Fed has been doing with what's called the repo market. And what this is there's like what used to be called the discount window. If a bank was in trouble, they could go to the discount window and they could get money overnight. They have to have, law says you have to have enough money in the vault to be able to open up the next day. You have to be able to cover all of your debts. Okay. So banks generally have that. This discount window was never opened by banks unless they were in real trouble. The Fed always had it, but it was a special line you would go into, and it was known. So all the banks could go, oh, that bank is in trouble. Okay. And when that bank was in trouble, then people would, it was really, it was a high risk thing. You only went there when you were really in trouble. And it could cause you more trouble if you went to that window because everyone would know, okay, there's trouble with that bank. But they did that for a reason, to make sure people were really responsible with the money, the banks, and to let everybody know, hey, there's trouble here with this particular sector or with this bank. Well, that all went to hell. They just opened up the discount window and anybody can go for any reason and it's all secret and everything else. Let me give you a headline. Federal Reserve Bank of New York announced it's issuing $50 billion, an overnight loan or repo agreement between itself and a member investment bank in New York. The Fed had been participating in the overnight lending market between banks since 2007. But $50 billion on one night to a single bank is something that has never happened before. And for that matter, we don't know that this has ever happened since. March 12th, Moody's downgraded Bear Stearns stocks. Now, I'm obviously reading to you a headline from 2008. The Federal Reserve announced it's willing to issue a $50 billion overnight loan. March 12th, Moody's downgraded Bear Stearns stocks and bonds to B to C grade, effectively junk assets as investors are concerned. Accountants that night calculated that Bear Stearns had less than $3 billion in total cash assets versus $82 billion in liabilities, so not enough cash on hand to open their doors. The game was over. The next morning, stocks crashed from $40 a share to less than $10 a share before the regulators took the stock off the exchange. Within 2 hours, J.P. Morgan had agreed to buy Bear Stearns for less than $2 a share, leveraging a 1% loan from the Fed to facilitate the purchase. It was the largest bank collapse in U.S. history until Lehman Brothers collapsed in a very similar fashion shortly thereafter. Now, we all remember and recognize the names and the situation of Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers, two giant investment banks that were caught with their pants down when the housing market and the CDO market fell apart in 2008. We all know that. But for the most part, what we don't know is that for both banks, there was an attempt to save them. In both cases, the night before the two largest and most prestigious investment banks in the world collapsed, the Federal Reserve Bank of the United States had attempted to give them huge loans, tens of billions of dollars, to try to bail them out each. $50 billion for one bank. So what? Last night, the U.S. Federal Reserve announced its largest, this is now current history, last night. The Federal Reserve announced its largest ever overnight lending program, larger than the attempted repo loan that was to have bailed out Bear Stearns in 2008 by a factor of 10. The Federal Reserve last night loaned more than $500 billion into the overnight liquidity market. That's where the banks show up to borrow some money because they don't have enough cash on hand to cover opening the doors the next day. $500 billion one night. Now, there are only a few banks that could possibly be measured to have liabilities or cash needs in the $500 billion range. Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, People's Bank of China, Mitsubishi Financial, Bank of America, Deutsche Bank. The largest banks in China, the largest banks in Japan, the largest bank in Germany, and the largest banks in the U.S. There is a precedent for COVID-19, the Spanish flu of 1918. We know how to navigate those waters. But there is no precedent in world history for a bank lending $500 billion to another bank in one night to cover the market losses. $500 billion is larger than the annual GDP of most nations on planet Earth. In 2008, it was a death rattle. Bear Stearns. In 2020, based on what the Fed did last night, what is it that we're hearing? What domino is weak? They're telling us the banks are fine. They're telling us the banks are good, and they probably are. But a $500 billion overnight loan is unprecedented. Keep your eye on the financial sector. I want to be really careful, and I have been going back and forth and really praying hard, and I'm really struggling right now because I am a guy that always sees the problems. I see the holes in the Titanic after we leave the iceberg. I see the problems, and I usually see them ahead. Once that hole is in the iceberg, I'm one that is better at not making people panic and saying, we're going to make it, we keep going, yada, yada, yada. I've warned you for a long, long time that we're going to have real problems. I'm not sure that this is it. Everything intellectually in me, everything that I know, all the history that I have of looking at these things, everything in me says this may be what we've been preparing for. But I don't have any feeling of dread or doom or panic whatsoever. That's unusual for me because I'm usually the one going, don't you see? Wake up. And I don't have that panic. And I honestly, maybe I'm not, I don't know. Maybe I'm not worthy. Maybe I'm not, maybe my time to warn people. I don't know what's happening to me right now. All I know is I can just tell you the facts, and I can also tell you, don't panic, because I really, truly believe that. But I also need to tell you at the same time, unprecedented things are happening, and I can't tie them all together yet. Something is off, and I just don't know what it is. And I would sincerely ask for your prayers. Ask for your prayers for everyone on this show and everyone who advises me, and most of all, me, that I figure out what the heck is, that I don't doubt, and that I have enough humility to actually hear what I'm supposed to tell you every day. Here's what I do know. We're not all going to die from the corona flu. We're all going to be on the other side. But on the other hand, we are facing headwinds that I haven't seen in my lifetime before. And hopefully everything calms down. But things don't fit together neatly yet. And I would just ask for your prayers, and I would ask you to do one more thing. Stop playing politics. Tell all of your friends, stop it. We know that the press is not telling us the truth. This is the time where we all need our credibility. The press doesn't have any credibility. So nobody is trusting what they say because they have never told the truth about any of the good things about Donald Trump. It's all bad. Everything that he does is just the worst. That's not possibly true. And they have no credibility. You must have your credibility, and you have to tell people, look, we're going to lose people, and if we lose 1%, which is a hopeful number, if we just only lose 1% of everybody who gets the coronavirus, it's going to be bad, and it's going to hurt all of us personally. But we're, most of us, going to make it through it. It's not that we're worried about. That's a big toll. There's two things you need to worry about. The overwhelming of the system because people panic, the overwhelming of our medical staff, and the best thing that we can do is take care of each other. Take care of the neighbor that is next to you. Make sure that they're okay. Make sure that you just call each other or FaceTime each other. Just do the things that all of our churches taught us to do. Don't wait around for the government to tell you to do things. You do them because in a free society, we have a responsibility to not be reckless with our health or other people's healths. Their health is you might not get sick, but if you've been exposed and you're getting somebody else sick, you're part of the problem. We all have to make sure that we are doing the right thing for, dare I say it, the collective, but in the way that we all understand it. We are all free individuals. Now let's step up and exercise our responsibility to also be e pluribus unum.